This is Tony Joe White, and you're listening to Walking the Floor.
I'm walking the floor over you.
Walking the floor.
I'm walking the floor. Walking the floor over you. Hola, senors and senoritas. This is Chris Shiflett, and you are listening to another fine edition of Walking the Floor, the leader in modern podcast technology. Welcome. It's been a busy week out on the road. Did a nice week of gigs. Kicked it off in Austin at the Continental Club with my buddies, the Fuckaroos. That's the second time we've done that. It was incredible. We had such a fun night. I love those gigs. We just throw them together, no real rehearsal. We're kind of winging it. We had go-go dancers. We had hecklers. We had it all. The Continental Club, it never lets you down. I've never had a bad show there. It's always packed with people and everybody's having a wing-ding, and it's just great. Can't wait to do that again. One of these days we got to take that thing on the road because that was really fun. Did a bunch of gigs through Texas. You probably saw Kiss Guy. He was awesome. That guy could really play. Normally when people get up and play a song with your band, they kind of blow it, but that guy did not blow it. He really milked his 3 minutes on stage with us to to get the most out of it, and he did, and people loved it. Kiss Guy. Love Kiss Guy. When we were in Dallas, we got to go play our day off soccer game over at the FC Dallas training ground, which was incredible. You know, we don't always get to play on a nice full-size grass pitch like that. And everyone took really good care of us and, only had one major injury, and I think that's healing up. Poor Johnny. Scottish John went down hard. Had to get shuttled off the pitch. But that's what happens when you play hard, aggressive football, like the Foo Fighter crew. What else? Big news this week. Arsene Wenger stepping down from managing Arsenal. After all the speculation of this season, he finally made his announcement. He's stepping down. We'll see what happens. People keep asking me about it. I'm excited. I think it's exciting. We'll see who they get to fill his shoes. Obviously, they're going to have to rebuild. But we'll see what happens. I'm sitting here in my hotel room in Palm Beach right now waiting for the Europa League semifinal with Atletico Madrid. By the time I post this, I guess we'll know what happened. Fingers crossed. Hope to get a little bounce. All right, friends, neighbors, have you followed the Walking the Floor Spotify playlist? If you haven't, get over there. It's your one-stop shopping for all the greatest country, honky-tonk, Americana, roots music type of tunes, man. Walking the Floor on Spotify. Find it, search for it, and follow it. Thank you. Oh, I've been getting a lot of questions this week about the guitar that I've been playing this past at all these shows out here on the road. And it is a master-built Fender version of my signature model. I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about this, but we are going to do a very limited run of those. It's fucking insane. It's the best guitar I've got out on the road. It's my favorite guitar right now. It's amazing. It's my signature model, but with block inlay and slightly overwound P90s. Oh, it sounds good. We've nicknamed it the Cleaver. Because my friend was at one of our shows. He said, that new guitar, it cuts through the sound like a meat cleaver. So the guitar is now known henceforth as the Cleaver. All right, let's talk about Zounds.com. Everybody's favorite internet website for music gear. Did you know right now every order over $599 is eligible for their exclusive 12 payment plan with no application process, no interest charged ever, and you just pay your first monthly installment and your gear ships immediately. Zounds.com. Come on and get it. All right, let's get to the interview. Interviewing Tony Joe White is kind of like stepping into one of his songs with him because he has this sort of laid-back, mellow way of talking, and you just kind of get into that groove with him. I enjoyed this conversation a lot because Although I got to work with Tony Joe White a little bit with Foo Fighters around the Sonic Highways album and TV show and all that, I never really got a chance to sit down and just talk to him one-on-one and pick his brain about stuff. And we covered a lot of different cool things in here, like his early days recording with Lightning Hopkins and Jerry Lee Lewis, and having Elvis cover one of his songs. And the first song he ever wrote was actually Polk Salad Annie that Elvis did, which is amazing. To even golfing with Willie Nelson and just all the crazy shit that this guy's done over the course of his life and career. And you gotta love a guy who still, to find his muse, will just grab a six-pack of cold beer, go down by the river with his acoustic guitar and build a fire and just kind of sit under the stars and wait till something hits him. We're going to pick it up right here. This is Tony Joe White talking about his songwriting on Walking the Floor.
A raining night in Georgia. It's such a rainy night in Georgia.
I still usually have got a guitar lick or something going in my head just about all the time. And I think this month I wrote a couple of real good songs, did some shows. If I'm out touring and stuff, I don't write too much.
Right.
But when I get home and, can get out, get a six-pack of cold beer and go down by the river and build a little fire and get an acoustic guitar, usually something will come along.
Right.
But I don't push it.
Right. So you don't do you not carve out specific time to do that, or you just kind of, when the inspiration hits you, you go do it?
Has to come.
Right.
It has to come from up high or down the river.
Or down low.
or somewhere. Because just to sit down and say, I'm going to write something,
yeah,
I would never attempt it.
I mean, were you ever like that kind of writer? Did you ever push yourself when you weren't inspired, like when you were younger? Did you have more like, oh, I got to do it?
I was very lucky with that. It was a way of life, Writing was something you waited on, and a title or a line or a guitar lick or something like that stay in your head a few days and just keep hammering you,
Yeah.
Finally you say, okay, I'm going to have to sit down, build me a little fire, and get with you.
You give into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so how do you nowadays? How do you decide when it's time to make a record? Do you just wait till you have 10 or 15 songs to choose from?
Yeah, I don't really put any time limit on when to make a record. I know when I've got a lot of songs built up that I would like to go out and play live in front of the people,
Yeah.
And like right now, I'm probably up in the 30s or somewhere like that with songs. Make a real good
New
album.
songs you haven't recorded.
Right.
Right.
So there comes a time when you get, you just really want to play it for somebody, live.
Yeah.
And just like we came from North Carolina yesterday and did an outdoor festival there, and I broke out a couple of things that I just finished, see how it'd go, and it went real good, and so now I'm ready to lay them on tape.
Where do the characters in your songs come from?
The what?
The characters in your song, in your songs, like the people you're singing about. I mean, is that all kind of personal experience?
The characters, yeah, were real.
Right.
Most of them, especially the swampy tunes, like Goodwill, Louisiana, where I grew up on a cotton farm. Most all those people, Roosevelt and Ira Lee, they were real. Old Man Willis, he was real. Polk Salad Annie was a real girl, but that wasn't her real name at the time.
The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
Just hers. I still did old Willis's, and old Man Willis he lived on the other side of us, close to the river, between us and the river. And he had 6 or 7 kids or 8. You never could tell by him. And he had four coons and a big old hound dog, and they all stayed in the house when they'd eat supper or eat dinner or lunch. All them things together around the table and eat with him. He was friends with
Really?
him.
That's awesome.
And he made moonshine and was a pretty rough old guy. Rode a black stallion, so he was definitely real. Witter Wimberly, she was real. So yeah, all the characters, I didn't really have to dream them up.
When you were a kid, what got you interested in music to begin with? Was your family musical?
Well, I had 5 sisters and an older brother. He's the oldest, I'm the youngest. And we had them girls in between us, and then Mom and Dad. And all of them played guitar and piano
Really?
and sang. And I would sit on the porch at night, after it was a cotton farm, after you'd been working all day and picking cotton. And I was, 6, 7 years old at that time. And I'd sit on the porch into the dark listening to them all harmonize and play a lot of gospel,
Yeah.
and then a few country tunes they knew.
Sure.
And then Daddy played like Chet Atkins. He played with his fingers,
Like finger style like that?
picked like that,
Yeah.
and it was his hero. It was Chet. So I grew up around it and never did want to get involved or even ask about it because I hadn't really had that little streak of lightning hit me yet. And my brother brought home, I was 16, he brought an album home by Lightning Hopkins. Speaking of streak of lightning. And I heard that record, and I would borrow Daddy's acoustic guitar and sneak it up to my room every night, man.
Wait, so prior to that, you weren't joining in on playing with your family?
No, I just sat
You were
and
just
listened to them.
Really?
I always enjoyed it because, man, they could all really sing, really harmonize.
Yeah.
Really good, and I'll just sit there and no TV, no nothing, just music.
You mean you weren't checking your Twitter feed on your iPhone at that point?
Wouldn't mess with none of that yet.
Okay, so it was Lightning Hopkins for you. And you eventually, I'm kind of skipping around here, but you eventually wound up playing on one of his records, didn't you?
I ended up, I was with Warner Brothers at the time, and they knew that Lightning was a hero, and they knew he was recording in L.A. at that time, and I was in L.A. doing some promotion on Polk State Atlantic.
So this was early in your career.
Early, yeah. 69, like that. And they asked me would I want to go to the studio and play a little harmonica and guitar with Lightning. I said, oh, man, yeah.
Had you met him at that point yet? Had you ever come in
I hadn't
contact?
met him yet. So I got down there probably an hour early, man. I was really juiced up about it. And I was sitting there in the studio, and I had acoustic guitar, and I had my harmonica around my neck. And Lightning and his wife come walking in the studio, and he had a big paper sack with a big old jug of wine in it. And he come right on into the studio, and he stopped for just a second, looked at me, and he said, "You playing with me, boy?" And I said, "Yeah." And I went into "Baby Please Don't Go" or one of his lyrics or something. And he said, "All right."
You got the gig.
He did that. And he just turned around towards the booth and said, "Turn it on." And they turned that tape on, and me and him played 13 to 14 songs with only him stopping to hit his wine. He'd stop and he'd say, do this in A, do this in E. Most of them was in E.
Right. So he's just rifling through them, and you're just what? Just kind of just winging it?
I played guitar and added some harmonica overdub every
Right.
now and then. Sometimes
Just
I just
following him through the
played.
changes kind of thing?
At the time.
That's amazing.
And he had an old, real funky old beat up guitar with a pickup put on it. So anyway, we get through with those 14 songs, and he stood up and he said, real nice playing with you, boy. Still call me boy the whole time. you know?
Yeah.
I said, real nice playing with you. And I looked in there, and he went in and had that paper sack. Now it's empty. And he walked over to these two guys, suits with ties, and they dropped 10 $100 bills in that sack. And his wife folded it up, and they walked out. Didn't say goodbye or nothing. No royalty signing checks.
Right.
or anything
No
like that.
contracts.
Nothing.
Yeah.
That's the way he did it. Went back to Houston.
You know, nobody has ever paid me in cash in a brown paper sack after a session in my life. I'm gonna throw that in the suggestion box next time we're making a record.
I think it would really seem like real money, you know?
Yeah. That's so cool. I mean, how would you compare that experience to then a little bit later, you got to go play with another guy who I'm assuming was another hero of yours. Didn't you made a record with Jerry Lee Lewis, right? That Southern Roots record.
Yeah, Charlie Rich I did a good bit with. Well, we fished and hung out together. Jerry Lee was just the one night. And
Oh, that was just a one-off
yeah,
thing.
I never did.
Because I had read that was like some crazy 3-day round-the-clock party session.
Yeah, I
kind of
never
thing.
did hang with him except for that night.
Okay.
We played, and Charlie I went out to, he wanted me to come to Las Vegas when he had out behind closed doors, and wanted me to open the show and do 20-25 minutes, and then come out and join him with the band and boogie a little bit. And we did it the first night, and it was probably the first time I saw a Las Vegas crowd. They got up and started boogieing, man, dancing around their tables.
Yeah. I thought you were just about to say they got up and started booing. But you went a very different direction with that. They could boogie in.
Boogie.
All right.
And me and Charlie, we was just getting off playing, you know, and the band and everything. And we got through, and we got back in the dressing room, and we was shaking hands, saying, oh, man, this is cool. And the manager came back from the casino, and he said, don't you ever do that again.
Well, why?
He said, y'all kept people away from the tables gambling because they kept waiting for y'all to come back out and do some more.
Right.
Y'all kept them over 30 minutes, which cost us probably $300,000.
Oh, my God.
So he walked out. I said, Charlie said, don't pay him no mind. I said, no. I just paid him mine, and I'll have me a ticket to Memphis tomorrow, and good luck with the rest of it.
Right.
Because I couldn't. I said, this ain't the way I do it anyway. He said, well, really, me neither. But anyway, I loved old Charlie, and the Jerry Lee Lewis thing was it was a pretty wild session night, you know.
Right.
It was just everybody for themselves, you know.
Really?
So I had my Strat and my harp, and that's all I did. Just
I mean,
played.
was he sort of in control of the whole thing? Was he telling people, like, you know, you hold this part down, you hold that part down, or was it just like count it off and roll?
He was totally in there, piano and shaking his hair and all that, man. It was like, I doubt he even knew we was in the room.
Right.
I care.
Right. That's wild, man. Well, let's back up a little bit. So, okay, how do you go from being, you know, 16, 17-year-old kid, figuring out Lightning Hopkins licks in your room, to, you know, a record deal and becoming a solo artist?
Well, let's see. In '16, after I had come along pretty good and was kind of making up some stuff and learning some Elvis things and stuff like that, me and a drummer in the 11th and 12th grade started playing house parties, uh, just for people we knew, out of
Just you and a drummer?
yeah, out of school. So I always kind of played with just drums,
Really? I was going to ask you about that, how you wound up touring with just you and a drummer, but you just answered it. So that's how you
It
started.
started that way.
Wow, okay.
And we
Like
played.
some
and,
precursor to the White Stripes kind of thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
and we was. I finished high school and I knew that I did not want to go back to the cotton fields. And I went down to Marietta, Georgia. I had a sister living there. And I drove a dump truck for the highway department in the daytime. At night I'd sit with that guitar, and when it would rain, I'd stay home all day and play the guitar. And I stayed there maybe a year and a half or two, and then moved on to Texas. And that's where the idea of trying to write, I said, if I ever write anything, I really want it to be something I know about, something real. And a week later, I heard Ode to Billy Joe on the radio. And I said, now that's real. I said, I am Billy Joe, man. I've been there in that life. And so my first thing to sit down and attempt was Polk Saddle Annie, which I knew the girl.
Well, Get Out. That's the first song you ever wrote.
Person. There was half of one I had called Sundown Blues, but it was kind of Jimmy Reed, and but this was the first one that had the characters and had Turner Joe White stuff in it. And then a month later, Rainy Night chords started coming.
Right.
And I remember them rainy nights in Marietta, Georgia. And that came. So I had two good starts that corralled me into a place where you had a standard of things you did. You didn't just try to write it for the radio or for anybody. You wrote because it was real.
Well, that is a very good lesson for young songwriters listening out there. What I take from that is write what you know.
I think it's a real good thing to stay with, because if you do that, nobody else has wrote it yet.
Right.
If it's something that you know.
Right.
So it's new.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating to me that somebody with your very specific musical sensibilities and songwriting style ultimately wound up writing for very mainstream artists. When I don't think of what you do as like mainstream sounding music. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, how did you wind up there? How did you wind up submitting your songs? And this is getting much later down into your career, but like, people like Tina Turner or whatever in the 80s.
Yeah, I always thought it was the simplicity of the song and the way I cut with just bass and drums, sometimes just drum. And a little organ maybe here and there, but the way we'd cut it and the words and everything, it could hit anybody from Charlie Rich to Tina Turner to Elvis Presley, or it didn't have no boundaries. It was there, it was real.
Right.
So the artist would hear these songs, or the publishing company would send a producer a song in most shows or somewhere like that was recording Retha or Etta James or somebody. And then we'd get word back that they were cutting it. And sometimes get word back that they wanted me to come down and play guitar and harmonica on the session. Which was always extra special because most of these people were, like I said, heroes, you know.
Yeah.
And then when Felton Jarvis called me, he was Elvis's producer, and that Elvis was getting ready to cut Polk Saddle Annie, and he was doing it in Las Vegas live, and they wanted to send a plane down to my house in Memphis and fly me and my wife to Las Vegas for the week to watch him record it every night.
Were you like, I've already been to Vegas and I didn't like it. No thanks.
Anyway, I did because Elvis was something.
Yeah,
And we'd sit in the dressing room every night after the show, and he had an acoustic guitar in there, and he would get me to show him blues licks.
Right. How was Elvis as a guitar player?
And I would show him the licks, and the next night he'd say, "Show me them licks again." He'd forget them right off the bat. And he didn't play a lot of guitar.
Right.
He didn't have to.
Sure.
You know,
well, he had that voice, man.
Had the voice, had the looks, and hold it in your hand and move around a little
Make
bit.
it look good.
But he really loved blues stuff. But he'd forget it as soon as I'd show it.
Right. I mean, so you got to actually hang with Elvis.
Yeah,
Spend
we
some
was
time
there
with him.
for a week, and then I stayed over at Stax a few times when he was recording in the Memphis days. He was cutting a couple of my tunes down there after Polk.
Right. Was your version of Polk Salad Annie out before he covered it?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, mine came out in '69 and hit in '70. And in '72, Elvis, they called and said, "Come out here, we'll just see us do it live."
So how life-changing was that when he had a hit with your song? I mean, that just must have been like a rocket ship taking off.
Well, there were so many big things already going on with, I think at that time, my version was number 3 in the States and number 1 in most places in Europe. So, and I was getting a lot of calls to come to Europe and play. So there was so much going on, man. It's really hard just to keep up with it. But it was big enough knowing that Elvis and people like that were listening to your tunes, you know.
It's got to be pretty life-affirming. I can only imagine, man. Can you talk a little bit? So your first record deal was Monument Records, right?
Yeah.
What was the culture around that label like at that time? Because you're talking, for people listening that don't know, that was like the home of who? Like Chris Christopherson, Roy Orbison, Dolly Parton. I mean, there was a lot of heavyweight artists on that label. What was that like being around, being a part of that?
Well, Chris and me and Billy Swan, we hung together a lot at night at the old Combine studio.
Were you living here in those days?
No, I was in Memphis.
Okay.
And we would hang out together, and I'd see Dolly and people like that would come in and out, because Combine Bob Beckham had this great personality, seemed to draw everybody from everywhere. And so many artists that come out of there. And but the whole scene was totally about music, It was like, if you'd come up with something that day, that night, everybody wanted to get on the couch, get some cold beers, and hear it.
Right.
So Chris would sing a new one he'd come up with, or I'd sing one. Billy. I mean, it was totally about playing and singing.
Right.
So I'd stay like a week at a time up here, and by then they had done set up a recording session for the whole album instead of just a single, because when they did the single of Polk Saddle Annie, I was playing in a club in Corpus Christi, Texas, $15 a night, and a lot of people kept they would request the song each night.
Sure.
Because by then they was hearing it on the radio. And they would dance to it. And it'd be me and a wooden Coke box and a guitar.
Yeah.
Small place. And so we could tell about how many it was going to take. So we ordered 1,000 records from Monument that we was going to sell at the club. And they sent all these records down to me and charged us $1 a piece for all of them. And I think we were selling them for $1.15, $1.20. Anyway, we sold out of the 1,000 the first week. And we kept it up. Month after month, they'd send us another 2,000 or 3,000. And then finally, KRLA, a radio station in Los Angeles, put it on their list rotation. And that's when it hit.
So why, in those years, why did you wind up moving to Memphis and not Nashville?
Well, my plans when I left Corpus Christi, Texas, was to come straight to Memphis.
Right.
Because that's where the blues, a lot of the way I played was happening. Elvis was happening there. A lot of things going
Stax
on there.
was happening. What was the Ardent? Was that happening at that time?
Ardent Studio was going good. But I had a little reel-to-reel, one of them small ones, on tape. And on that tape, I had, like Old Men With Us, I had about 4 Swamp songs.
Okay.
And I had the original Polk with just me and a guitar. So I brought that with me. And I still don't know to this day, when I got to Memphis and 40 turned east, I just kept on east, headed straight up here. And I kept saying, man, what are you doing? And I couldn't turn around. And because I knew I was headed into country and westernville, you know.
Right.
And
I mean, where did you see yourself genre-wise at that time? What did you think of, like, where did you kind of place yourself in all that? Because I think your music had a huge influence on country music through those years, but I wouldn't exactly classify you as a country music artist necessarily, right? I mean, where do you see yourself?
Well, like I said, the simplicity of the songs was reaching a lot of different sides. But I had myself still in kind of between Lightning Hopkins and Elvis Presley and John Lee Hooker. I was still on. That's what I was doing on stage, you know.
Right.
And that's what I was writing a lot of, that kind of music, but not just blues, but character blues and stuff
Right.
like that. So all of a sudden, when I got here, I just walked around Broadway and went into a couple of record shops and I asked this one guy that owned a record store here. I can't remember the name. Might have been Ernest or something.
Ernest Tubb?
Might have been Ernest Tubbs.
Really?
But it wasn't him that was talking to me. It was another guy that worked in there. He said, "You drove from where?" And I said, "I drove from Corpus Christi, Texas. I was going to see if I could get a few tunes to listen to."
I'm here to make it. Where do I go?
He said, "Well, I'll tell you right now, you drove a long ways for nothing."
Oh, man. Welcome to Nashville.
When I told him what kind of music I played, he said, "Why, you think you could play blues up here?" I said, "I don't know. I just wanted to go somewhere to see if I could play something." And I went out to a club that night, and the bouncer knew a guy that knew a guy that knew a guy. The next morning, I had Bob Beckham's phone number at Combine Music. So that started it right there, and Beckham heard that little reel-to-reel,
Yeah.
and all them other songs that were on there. And that's where he said, we're gonna do a publishing deal, and we're gonna do a record deal.
I mean, that's an amazing story. It sort of it leads into something I wanted to ask you about, which was like what Nashville felt like in those days, and how much more of a small town it was. I mean, you said you just came to town, and after a couple of days, you wound up basically getting your record deal and your publishing deal. I mean, that certainly wouldn't happen, or doesn't happen today, I'm guessing, for most young artists that come here.
I'd say that particular thing hasn't happened in a lot of years.
Right.
For up here. It's just not the way they do it,
Right.
And I was
it just a smaller circle of people that were making those decisions in those days?
Yeah. I was real lucky to have timed it and played these songs for probably the only publisher here that would have listened to something that was kind of funky and bluesy and
Right.
danceable, and old Beckham had a tequila hangover at the time, and he said, "Man, I don't want to hear nothing." And his secretary, she said, "Well, I think you need to hear this boy. Let him come in." He drove a long ways. He said, "No, I don't know." She said, "Just, he's coming in. I'm letting him in." And she opened his door. And old Beckham's sitting there holding his head. And
So
he
you
said,
owe it all to a kind secretary.
Yeah, Carolyn,
amazing.
man. She stuck with it. So she said, "You need to see this boy," because at that time I had a little black suit with a string tie, and I was, I was cleaned up pretty good, man.
Dressed
But I
for success.
had an Elvis hairdo at the time.
Did you really?
Yeah,
Nice.
big wave and sideburns.
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
You can see it on the album. But anyway, that was the only place that would have probably given me a shot at all. And like now, I wouldn't know of anybody that got a shot like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's like fairy tale stuff.
It really is, man.
This is a total left turn, but can you tell me about golfing with Willie Nelson?
Golfing with Willie?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, we played so many years together at this benefit they did for the Boys Town in Austin, the poor side of Boys Town.
Is that how you got to know him, or did you already know him through music
I
circles?
had met him a couple of times when I lived in Texas.
Was he living in Nashville when you first came up this way? Was he still here? Or
I
had he
didn't
already
know
gone
about
back?
it if he did.
Okay.
But I would go down, and a lot of other artists was on the bill, and we would raise money for this. It was Coach Darrell Royal and Willie and Ben Crenshaw. It was their tournament, and they would raise $500,000 a year from songwriters and players that came. And teams would be like 4 men to a team, and most of them were all oil men, had money to burn, And they would pay that $1,500 each to play with an artist. And sometimes they would get to choose the artists they liked.
Right.
So it started there with me and Willie, and he one day he wanted me to come out to his golf course.
He has his own golf course.
Yeah,
Nice.
he had his own.
That's when you've hit the big time. When you have your own.
That's when you hit it. And Willie, he had a golf cart that had a full bar inside it with everything in the world you can imagine. And Willie didn't even drink. And at that time, 11 o'clock in the morning, I just had a look Coca-Cola or something going.
Maybe that was his trick to get the people he was playing with hammered while he's not drinking.
Well, he wasn't doing it much anyway. But Willie got on the first tee, and he already had a little smoke going. And he reared back and took a huge blow at the ball, and it went straight up over his head about 100 yards, straight up, and it almost hit him coming down, and it landed. And he turned to me and he said, "Now, Tony Joe, this is what golf is all about, hang time." And any time that ball was up in the air, he was having him some puffs. So it was like all day long we kept trying to hit these pop
Right.
flies.
Life lessons with Willie Nelson, man.
But he's a good golfer when he starts playing, when
Yeah.
he gets serious. But
Did you guys ever work together musically?
the only thing all them years, I carried Willie and sent Willie songs year after year that was really on the line, like especially with him and Waylon, because me and Waylon was hanging together a lot and writing. And the only time we've worked together is in these last few months right now. That's the God's Problem Child,
Oh
the new
yeah.
album.
Oh, are you on that record?
That's the song.
Oh, nice.
Me and Jamie Johnson wrote that.
Oh, wow.
And Willie called Jamie on his phone after we had wrote that out at my studio in Franklin, and just had the words and the guitar and with Jamie singing. He kind of sings like Willie, a little bit. And he called Willie on the cell phone and played it for him over the phone. And Willie said, "I'm cutting that." And Jamie come back in. He drove back to the studio and come inside. He said, "Willie's fixing to cut it." I said, "You're kidding." He said, "I've never had a Willie cut." And I said, "I hadn't either, man." I said, "He was the last human on earth that I ain't had some kind of a music deal with."
Yeah.
And here he is, named the album, the whole thing. So we was real tickled to both killed us.
How'd you connect with Jamie Johnson? And is that somebody that you write with often, or was that just a
No,
one-off kind of thing?
Jamie was our first time to ever write together. And he called Jody, my son, and manager, and wanted to set up a writing get together. And he wanted to do it out there in that old studio.
Yeah.
So house, old 1870 house, a lot of wood, good sounds.
Yeah.
And our first try that evening, we started coming up with these chords. And then some words come, and some more chords come, more words. And all of a sudden, there it lay, man. And we looked at each other, and we'd been at it about 3 hours. And he said, "It's done." I said, "I know it." And I couldn't believe it, man. And so we went to Jamie's studio a few days later downtown here. He's got a real big studio, and we cut it again and did different pieces, him and me, and then version of him, version of me,
Yeah, yeah.
and then they sent it all back to Willie because he wanted to mix it with some more people. He wanted Jamie on it, me on it, and Leon Russell.
Oh, wow.
And he had Leon just before he passed.
Right.
So it's Willie and us.
Wow, that's a good lineup. When's Jamie Johnson gonna make? And I realize you're not his manager and don't speak for him, but is he getting ready to make a new album anytime soon?
I haven't heard. He plays so many gigs.
Yeah.
We
He
just
seems
did
like he's
a-
out there working and being active, but he hasn't made a new record, like a record of originals, in I think quite a while.
I don't think he has either because he plays so much. He just stays. We played just 2.5, 3 weeks ago together down at most of the shows, close to most of the shows, Gulf Shores. A benefit for this friend of ours, this girl. She used to work for Waylon, and she had went to the other side with some kind of a cancer that he started a foundation for it, and this was the 6th gig done for that. And that night we raised $350,000 for. So now he's got me, and he had a golf tournament that day. So we mixed golf with music and draws a lot of people, and we had a great crowd.
This is another total left turn question, but I understand that there was a point maybe in the 80s when Mark Knopfler asked you to join Dire Straits, and you turned him down. What's the story there?
That Mark offered me a position at
Yeah, is that true? That he asked you to join Dire Straits?
No.
Oh, that is not true.
No, that's not true, although we was hanging together a lot.
Oh, so you can't believe everything you read out there.
It was one of my favorite bands, and I was with him in London, and he gave me this beautiful Spanish guitar that a guy had handmade in London, and he made 7 of them. And I said, "Where are the other ones at?" And he said, "Well, I've got 4 of them," and he gave me 1. Then he came down to the house, and we hung and played around the campfire with the guitars. And I had this old 330 Gibson, which is really rare, with black pickups.
A 330?
Yeah, 330.
So what is that, like closely related to a 335 kind of thing?
Kind of double cutaway, blonde. There was always kind of blonde with black pickups. And we was down in my studio downstairs, and he kept playing that thing and playing it and playing it. Took it outside with the fire. He'd play it out there. And when he left, I said, "Hey, you forgot something." And he said, "What?" I said, and I pointed at that Gibson, and he looked like he was going to cry. Man, he said, "No, you're not going to do that." He said, "You can't give something like that away." I said, "Take it." And he did, and he still plays it now.
Really?
On concert.
Hey, listen, man, I'm just going to throw this out there. If you got any old guitars you want to get rid of, I'll take a few of them off your hands. I didn't see you walk in with any of them, though. That's the problem. Okay, so you weren't going to join Dire Straits. Your guitar joined Dire Straits.
I think so.
That's what happened.
I think so. And there was talk about it from the public and the press and stuff, because a lot of people in England and France, Germany, everywhere thought Knopfler and I played kind of a lot like each other.
Right.
And it wasn't that. It was we was raised up on the same kind of music.
Sure. He has a very original, sort of one-of-a-kind style to what he
goes
does.
with those fingers and plays like Chet. Now he played like Chet in a way, but him and I have been down the road a long time together, man. I really admire him a lot.
Yeah, he's amazing. All right. One thing, I mean, we sort of talked a little bit about your gear, or some of your guitars or whatever, but what is your sort of go-to live rig nowadays? For when you go out on the road, like what guitars, what amps, pedals, all that sort of stuff.
I only carry that same old Strat, so 65 beat-up Strat, and of course the harmonicas, and I've still got the original wah foot pedals with pokes out of the ante. It's called a boomerang.
Right.
At that time,
I've still got. You take your actual your vintage stuff out.
I just keep that out, and I just keep taping it up. So I've got it, and usually the promoters will have a couple of Blues DeVille 410s,
right,
or a Hot Rod 410.
Okay.
So it's basically what I use in the studio all the time, and just drums.
Well, so what's next for you? Tour, make a new record? What do you got on the horizon?
Well, there's these 30-something songs that's got to be dealt with on
that's
tape.
That's a triple record. You heard it here first.
We'll probably pick out 10 or 12 out of the batch and start from there. And but the next step is to we're still doing some live shows, and there was some talk about maybe coming back to Australia in December, but I think that's going to have to be put up a little bit.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for coming down here and doing this today, man. I really, really enjoyed talking to you.
I enjoyed it too, man. Thank
Awesome,
you.
man. Cheers.
I still love y'all's band.
Oh, thank you. All right, that was Tony Joe White bringing the swamp to Walking the Floor. Hey, get on over to walkingthefloor.com. I'm going to post a bunch of links for you to check out what Tony Joe White is up to, things he's done, interesting things that we talked about during the interview. Walkingthefloor.com. We're kind of tweaking it lately. We're making it a little more like there's a little more there to see. So get on over there and check it out. And since you've reached the end of this episode, make sure you check out all the other 100+ episodes that are sitting there in the iTunes store, on Spotify, or wherever you want to find it. And when you're done with all of those, get on over to the Spotify Walking the Floor playlist and just follow it, man. Just follow it. We need subscribers. We need more subscribers. Tell a friend. Tell 10 friends. Get the subscription up. All right, that's it for this week. We'll be back in a couple weeks with Charlie Crockett, who just put out a great brand new record that if you haven't listened to it, go check that out. And you can do a little homework in advance of the interview that I'm going to post in 2 weeks. How about it, kids? Come on. All right, we'll see you soon. Adios, amigos.
Every day before summertime, she'd go down by the truck patch and pick her a mess of pork salad and carry it home in a tote.